Welcome! I'm Mallory Peterson here in Ashland, Wisconsin at the Chequamegon Food Co-op classroom to give you a tutorial on how to frost and decorate a round layered cake. Perfect for Valentine's Day. What you'll learn in this tutorial you can use on all shapes and sizes of cake for any occasion, whether it be for yourself, your loved ones, your family and friends. This is a 3-video class. In the first video we'll be decorating a round layered cake. In the second video we'll be decorating cupcakes. And in the third video, we'll go over tips and tricks, including piping. Let's get started! So the tools we're using today here are a Wilton turntable. I have a small offset spatula as well as a medium-sized offset spatula. We have our bucket of frosting with a nice spatula in here to mix our frosting with. And then you'll also need an extra bowl for your extra frosting that you'll scrape off of your spatula. It's always great to have a nice wet cloth on the side to wipe your hands off as well as your spatulas as you need. We'll start with our 12-inch round cake board. I'm going to connect this to my turntable with some tape, just so it doesn't slide around. Usually a few pieces will do. Get it nice and centered, put it on there. I'm working with 9-inch round cakes, and what we want to do is start with a little dollop of frosting to put in the middle of our cake board. This is going to act as glue to keep our cake in place. You want to smear it down nice and smooth. You don't want a big hump, otherwise your cake will eventually hump up. This is a 9-inch round cake layer that I've already trimmed myself. We're going to center it perfectly on this board. The base is going to hold the rest of the cake, so you want to make sure it's on there good and firm, so you give it a nice press. Today we're just going to put frosting in the middle of our layers. I want to make sure that my frosting doesn't have bubbles in it, so I'm going to mix it up really well with my spatula to smooth out any bubbles. But this is the middle of the cake, so you don't have to worry too much about those bubbles. I'm going to take my small spatula, and from the center I'm just going to push it out to the sides. You can put as much or little frosting on the inside as you like, but we want to make sure this is nice and flat. Add more or take some off as you need. It's okay if a little hangs over the edge because you'll be able to smooth that on the sides of the cake when you're finished piling your layers up. So I spin my turntable, I can get any excess. Just going to scrape it back into our frosting bowl. We'll grab our second layer. We'll make sure the edges line up and do the same thing. Remember to try to work with the frosting. That way you won't pick up any cake crumbs. It's good practice to hold your spatula in place and turn your turntable. If you can hold your spatula nice and still, that will ensure a nice flat surface. And now our final layer. This layer I'm going to put on upside down because of the nice flat edge of the pan from it baking. We'll put that on top. Feel free to give it a good eyeball. Press it down where it needs. It looks pretty straight to me, but feel free to push it around to straighten it however you need. So this next layer we're going to put on top is called a crumb coat. And what a crumb coat does is it acts kind of like glue to keep the crumbs in its very own layer. That way when you put on your final outside layer, that outside layer won't have any crumbs in it. But this one is allowed to have crumbs. So we're going to start by putting frosting on top. And I'm going to use my medium spatula. And once again, we're going to work with the frosting and move it slowly from the middle out to the sides. This coat isn't going to be very thick. It just needs to be thin enough to catch all the crumbs. Any frosting that goes over the sides, you simply take your spatula and push it down the side of the cake. Notice how we're catching crumbs, and also how we're just using that extra frosting that's sticking out to smear right in. Put a nice big dollop on top. So you can take a little bit of this dollop, put some on your spatula, and push it down the side of the cake like so. All the way to the bottom. It's especially helpful to do a crumb coat on a dark cake with light frosting. It's really just one extra step to ensure that your frosting is nice and smooth. The frosting I'm using today is American buttercream. We'll have a recipe linked as well for that. So I'm just catching the crumbs, smoothing it out. Takes a little bit of time. All right. Now we're going to smooth this baby down as good as we can. Holding your spatula at a nice 90-degree angle to the board and keeping it in place is a good way to ensure that it's straight. Now this is a crumb coat, so it's okay that we can see the cake through. This is also one way to decorate a cake. It's called a naked cake. I believe this will be semi-naked because it has frosting on top. If you're not a huge frosting fan, this is a great way to go. Once you get your sides pretty even, you just want to make sure that top is nice and flat. I like to take it down eye level. And what I do is I start at the outside with my spatula parallel to the board, and I pull it in towards the center. And even if you only take a little bit off at a time, that's good. That's a good way to go. If you take off too much, it's okay. You can always put more back on. Take your time with this. If you get frustrated, it's okay to stop or take a break and come back to it. But remember, it's just a crumb coat. We've got another layer going on top. So now that we've finished our crumb coat, we are ready to go ahead and put on our final coat of frosting. So what I like to do for that, and there are many different ways that you can put on the frosting, but today I'm just going to show you with a spatula because it's not as hard as it seems, and it's also like pretty basic first way to frost a cake. I personally find it to be my favorite. So what we're going to do is take our frosting and put a nice big dollop on top. Or a few dollops for that matter. And sometimes I find it easier to work with a small spatula. If you're having troubles with the big spatula, try with a small spatula first. What I like to do is take a good dollop on my spatula and bring it down the side of the cake. You're going to want like a good ½ inch of frosting on the outside. But using a small spatula makes it really easy to handle, even if it's a big cake. I find an offset spatula can fit in many places. Your hand won't rub up against the cake. The small ones are easy for children to use, but like I said, they work great on a large cake for anybody. I feel like this method with a small spatula, can also be less messy. Just smooth it down the side. Work with the frosting. You don't want to push too hard. You don't want to dig into the cake or dig up any of those crumbs we just trapped. We'll go all the way around the sides. It's okay if any frosting sticks up along the side. It'll actually help us make our cake top nice and square in the end. The best tools you can decorate a cake with are what you're most comfortable with. If you get the chance to try a few different spatula shapes and sizes, go for it. And if you find one that you really love, stick with it. Almost got everything off the top here. And give it just little pushes to work it in there. So now, let's see, that we've got our sides. We can try to smooth our sides out. and take off any excess frosting. And there will be a little bit. Any spot where you scrape too much, just go ahead and put some more on. It's the wonderful thing about frosting a cake. If you screw up, you just take it off and try again. Once again, if you just hold your spatula and turn your cake board, we'll make a nice, smooth, clean line. I'm not too worried about bubbles today. We're going to give this cake a texture. I personally like cake with a texture. I think really smooth frosting is amazing. I also know it can be pretty hard to accomplish sometimes. So if you're having a hard time making really smooth frosting, don't worry about it. Just work with the textures that the cake is giving you. If your cake is nice and straight, that's really the key. What you do from there is only just going to make it more beautiful. So our sides are pretty smooth. I'm going to say that's fine. Because like I said, we're going to give it a little texture. So we want to make sure the top has frosting as well. That's nice and smoothed out. I'm actually going to switch to my medium-sized spatula. Get a good dollop of frosting on it. And I'm going to work up the side over, let's see. What I'm trying to do here is build up a tiny little wall of frosting. Can you see how this is happening? So along the side, we're just going to push up a little wall. We can take our big spatula, smooth out the sides. So we got a nice wall all around the outside edge. I'm going to put some more frosting in the middle, and we're going to work from the inside out. And you can just kind of hold the tip of your spatula and spin your table to push it out with. This is where having a cake table really comes in handy. So we're going to push frosting all the way to our little wall. But we want to keep our wall up straight. And then what we'll do to make a really nice 90-degree corner on the top of this cake, we'll take our spatula again, hold it parallel to the board, and we're going to take it from the outside and pull it in just like we did before. If there's any spot where your wall wasn't tall enough, that's okay. We'll just go back in with some frosting. And if there's any spot where your wall needs to be lifted up a little bit to make that nice sharp angle, just go ahead and push your wall back straight again. Take the corners and pull them in. See a spot we can add some more. Go on the top, go on the side. We'll straighten that out. Through. I'm going to use my big spatula to really come in and make that top flat. Another good idea, if you're having trouble areas on the cake, then make that the spot where you put some decoration. Cover it up and nobody will ever even know it's there. So now that we've put our outside layer of frosting on the cake, what we're gonna do now is add some color to this outside frosting layer. So instead of actually coloring all the frosting before we put it on, we're just going to put a little bit, a splash of color on the outside. The way I like to do this is mix up some colors. Here we have a nice peach and a pretty raspberry red. And what we're going to do is put the frosting on this large spatula. We'll put a little peach on the bottom, we'll put a little peach on the top. Then we'll go ahead and grab some of this pink, and we're going to smear that on our spatula as well. Now what we're going to do is put this along the outside of the cake. And we want just like a real nice, light, wispy coating. Oh, as you can see, this was in the wrong spot. And we'll just go back through and keep adding frosting to our spatula to add to the cake. It'll make some nice wispies of color. It's okay if they get mixed together. It'll make like a marble pattern. You can do this with all kinds of colors, or just one. But it's a nice way to add color without eating a ton of food coloring, if that's not your thing. If you need to go back through and put a little on with your little spatula, that's fine too. Maybe we'll mix the colors up a little bit on our spatula, see what happens. Get creative. There we go. This cake is getting some personality, you guys. There we go. You can put on as much or as little as you want. Smooth it out. I like that. We're just going to smooth it off the top. I'm not going to spread it into the top. You definitely can. You can do this pattern on the top if you'd like. For this cake, we're going to leave the top white. So any extra frosting sticking up like a little wall, we're just going to scrape it off. See how I scraped it off on the top on my spatula there? Just do a little scrape on the edge. I think we'll call that good. Now the texture we're going to add, I'm going to use my small spatula again. What we're going to do is hold it up against the frosting just very lightly, and we're going to make a ridge in the cake. So we're going to hold our spatula still, gently into the frosting, and we're going to spin our cake table. And what this is going to do is add a texture, and then we slowly move our spatula up the cake. If you want a deeper texture, you can push harder. But just remember, you could make it all the way through to the cake. It's up to you if you want to make it all the way through to the cake or not. All the way up. Nice and slow. Kind of smoothed itself out, didn't it? That's a fun one. Great. Now we're going to move on to the top of the cake. Now that we have the peach in the bag, we'll go ahead and put our raspberry color in. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take a little bit smaller bit of raspberry this time, just to make sure I get it in the right spot. We're going to scrape it on the bag like so. It's okay if the colors mix a little bit. They're going to mix in the bag anyway. But we want to keep them as separate as we can. Make a nice line up the bag. Like so. Then we'll squish all our frosting together. Push it down until it gets to the bottom. We're gonna, once you get all your frosting pushed to the bottom, you're gonna twist your bag to create some tension in the bag. And what that does, when your bag gets firm, it makes it easier for you to squeeze. As you squeeze the frosting out, your bag will become loose, in which case you just simply twist it again. Keep the twist between your pointer finger and your thumb, and that's where you'll hold your bag. Now, we added 2 colors, so we want to make sure they're in the right spot. This rose tip is a teardrop shape. The fat part of the teardrop is the bottom of your petal, and the thin part of the teardrop is the top of your petal. So as you're piping a rose, you will always hold your bag in this position. The bottom of the teardrop is the widest. Stays on the bottom. Now we want to make sure that our colors are in the right spot. So the tip of the rose petal would be the thinnest point of this teardrop. So what I'm going to do is just turn this tip so that it lines up with the red. Easy peasy. And then we're going to squeeze out enough to make sure that our colors line up correctly. I see a little bit of peach on the tip, but you know what? I love it. The pink is right where it's supposed to be. So here we go. So for piping a rose, we're going to use our flower nail. You just hold it in your fingers like so. Make sure you can twist it. And then we've got our piping bag with our rose tip and the fat side of it down. First we wanna pipe just a pile of frosting. That's gonna give us a start. And now we're gonna add some petals. So starting at the base, you can let the tip touch the top of the nail here. You're just going to squeeze, pull up, and come back down as you turn the nail. And then you always start the next petal in the middle of the last petal you made. So because this is the middle of the rose, we're gonna kind of like push the petals close to one another. What we're doing is we're angling the tip inward so that the petals fold inward. Wiping your tip off to keep it nice and clean will also help you have control of the frosting. So we'll start in the middle of this petal that we just finished. We'll go up and over to the next petal. And we'll start in the middle, go up and over to the next petal. Continue until your rose is as big as you'd like it. And as you're making the outside petals, you're going to angle your tip outward so that your petals fold outward. Making roses is really a lot easier than it looks, so don't let yourself be intimidated by this. Go ahead and give it a try. You'll be surprised at how beautiful the flowers are you can create. Next, now that we have our rose made, we're simply going to take it off with a pair of scissors. And all you do is go beneath it, cut it off. Next, we'll place it on the cake. We just simply lay it down on the cake and pull out your scissors. One rose done, 2 more to go. Great, so now that we finished putting our roses on the cake, now is for the real fun part. We're gonna put candy among these flowers. And I've got quite an assortment here. I've got some beautiful chocolates that are heart-shaped. I have some heart-shaped gummies, as well as some sprinkles and some raspberries. And I'm gonna ask my lovely film assistant, Sarah, to come up and help me do this. Are you ready, Sarah? Great.
I'm ready.
We got our gloves on. We're gonna be touching things with our hands. We wanna be extra safe and clean. So here we go. Let's start with the chocolate, Sarah.
Okay, I'm no pro at this.
That's okay. You go ahead and pick the chocolate ball. I'm gonna stick one here, and if you wanna stick one on the other side.
Like here?
Yeah,
okay.
Looks good to me. And then this little chocolate ball is gonna go down on the bottom.
Okay.
Yep, so we'll spin it this way so we can see what we're up to. Stick one down there. And then we're gonna stick our chocolate hearts on, and they can kind of go anywhere. You can tuck them in the roses, by the roses. So I'll stick one up in there. You can maybe put 3 of those on top.
Sure.
Yeah. Wonderful. Beautiful. Stick one right here. Should we put one of those down in the front too?
Yeah, we definitely should.
You can stick it right back in wherever you want. There you go. Perfect. Thanks, Sarah.
Oh, you're welcome.
Now let's add some raspberries. Everyone loves
Yes.
raspberries. You go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, just tuck it in there.
Back.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wherever you think it looks the best. There's no wrong way to do this. We really just want to make a fun, delicious work of art. Beautiful. Tuck a couple on the front. Wherever you see fit. Stick them right here. So we started with the larger pieces first, and now we'll go in with some of the smaller things. So we've got these really fun gummies. They're actually super tasty. I gave them a real good taste test last night.
I bet you did.
They were excellent. If you haven't tried them, you should. So we'll just tuck these in anywhere we can. We're getting a bit colorful here too, which I love. It's one of my favorite parts about cake decorating.
Everything's in heart shapes.
Everything's in heart shapes.
Because we love cake.
We do love cake. Aww. I love love, Sarah.
Oh,
Do you love love?
I do love love.
Aww.
It's a good thing.
It is a great thing. So let's see, we'll tuck a couple more hearts up here on top. Can't have too many. Beautiful. Now we'll tuck some on the bottom and the front. Oh yeah, beat you to it. Very nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Now we'll go through with our sprinkles. Yeah. So all we're gonna do is just kind of, I'm gonna try to avoid the roses a little bit. Now our buttercream's kind of hardening a little bit, so you can always just tap it in a little with your fingertips. That way it'll stay on. Ooh, yeah. This is a great step for young kids and adults alike.
Oh yeah, this is fun.
Sarah, you're really good at this. Have you done this before?
Not the sprinkles.
No?
Well, maybe I have. It's been a long time if I have.
That's great. We'll toss them in the front. We'll see how we can do it.
Oh, wow, that looks awesome.
Yeah? Are you feeling this cake?
I am feeling this cake. I'd be so happy if I got this cake.
Yay! So we got our gloves on, so we're just gonna kind of like tuck them in with our fingertips. You can push them along the cake board along the bottom. That's kind of an easy way to stick them on there. Oh, Sarah.
Oh, Mallory.
This turned out really cute. I'm so glad you're helping me. Teamwork is the best way.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah.
There you
Oh,
go.
great. So this concludes our cake decorating tutorial for today. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you learned a thing or two to help you on your future cake decorating adventures. Thanks so much for joining us.